The next story comes from Turkey and challenges the certainty of official conclusions. On January 2, 2022, Melek Sert was hospitalized due to complications during the 5th month of pregnancy. After an emergency procedure, medical staff informed the father, Hasan Sert, that the child had not survived. An official report was issued. The family was given the infant, prepared for burial. While traveling to the cemetery, Hasan noticed something unexpected. A faint sound, then movement. The child's chest appeared to rise. The journey changed instantly. The infant was rushed back to the hospital and placed in intensive care, where he remained for 1 week. Despite efforts by doctors, the child passed away days later. The family filed a complaint, stating that basic checks had not been performed initially. Authorities later closed the case, saying no fault was found. Hasan continues to appeal the decision. He maintains that if proper procedures have been followed, his child might be alive today, already 3 years old. The case has reopened discussions about certainty, timing, and how close life can linger to its edge. Sarah and Tom Hawkins moved into a quiet family house with their 2 children, 11-year-old Emma and 8-year-old Joshua. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but within weeks, Sarah began mentioning strange disturbances to friends. At night, footsteps echoed on the staircase while everyone slept. Doors closed on their own, even though the air inside the house was still. Personal items would disappear and later reappear in unfamiliar places. Months passed, and the activity intensified. Objects fell from shelves without warning. Heavy knocks sounded from the kitchen walls late at night. Wet footprints appeared across the floor, as if someone had walked barefoot through the house, though no one had. In 2020, the first major incident occurred. During a family dinner, a heavy plate slid off the table on its own and shattered near the younger child. No one had touched it. Soon after, the family moved away, believing the disturbance was tied to the house. It was not. In the new apartment, strange events followed them. Children's toys activated by themselves at night. Shadows appeared briefly in mirrors. Marks surfaced on the walls, shaped like words, but impossible to read. In 2021, Tom Hawkins lost his life in a sudden road incident. Investigators noted that his car sharply turned on an empty road, as if avoiding something unseen. 1 year later, Emma passed away quietly in her sleep. Medical specialists could not determine a cause. Neighbors later recalled the girl saying weeks earlier, "He told us we weren't supposed to leave." In 2024, Sarah also passed away. Before her death, she left a voice message for a close friend: "If you hear this, don't go back to that house." It follows those who saw it. Authorities found no explanation, but the pattern left behind continues to disturb those familiar with the case. Footage from Brazil shocked viewers nationwide.
Eita caralho! Esse cara faz parte do cenário, ó.
Porra nenhuma, mano. Olha espremendo lá os pés dele lá.
Meu Deus, desceu! Ai, meu Deus, olha! Olha, meu! Ai, meu Deus, pra que subiu ali?
Como é que é? Olha, já pegou ele.
Ai, meu Deus, pra que subiu?
Já pegou ele, já pegou.
A 19-year-old man entered a restricted zoo enclosure after climbing a tall barrier. He descended into the area and approached a large predator. Staff responded immediately, but the incident ended within moments. The zoo in João Pessoa was temporarily closed during the investigation. Officials remind visitors that barriers exist not as decoration, but as the final line between safety and irreversible outcomes. A troubling event unfolded in the Russian city of Kirov. A 67-year-old retired man was stopped inside a store over an unpaid item of minimal value. According to reports, a confrontation followed involving store staff and security. Witnesses state the man was restrained while waiting for authorities. When officers arrived, he was unresponsive. Medical examination later revealed an existing heart condition. However, investigators opened a case related to unintended loss of life. The man's daughter stated that those involved continued working at the store and that the family received no apology or acknowledgement. The investigation remains active, raising concerns over restraint practices and responsibility in everyday conflicts. The final story tonight comes from Ecuador and remains unexplained. Journalist Marlon Torres was traveling at night from Xuxufindi to the province of El Oro. The road was empty, the air calm, visibility clear. After passing a toll booth, a warning signal activated inside his vehicle, the system that detects passengers in the back seat. First on one side, then the other. Marlon was alone. He checked the rear seats. Empty. Moments later, the air inside the car turned cold. A wave of nausea followed. At a nearby fuel station, the indicators vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. He called his partner and continued driving. Less than a minute later, both indicators activated again, simultaneously. Marlon accelerated, focused only on reaching his destination. Upon arrival, he noticed something unsettling. The coins he had tossed earlier now sat neatly stacked on the driver's door. Days later, a full inspection found no technical issues. The system was functioning normally. Marlon has never claimed to know what happened that night. He only insists on one detail: he was not alone. A chilling story from the United States has resurfaced after new interviews revealed the disturbing experience of Camilla Gent, a woman who spent nearly 2 weeks in a coma following a severe medical emergency. Gent, a spiritual counselor from Oregon, was rushed into surgery in 2013 after developing a life-threatening infection. After the operation, she slipped into a 13-day coma. During that time, she later claimed to have experienced a vivid, terrifying descent into a dark realm unlike anything she had imagined. According to her account, she found herself surrounded by shadowy figures that crawled near her and whispered deceptive visions about her loved ones. She described the place as a realm without comfort, filled with confusion and overwhelming dread. Just as the visions grew unbearable, she claimed a massive radiant hand appeared above her, pulling her upward. She reported seeing 2 angelic beings guiding her through a landscape of bright grass and blooming flowers that moved as though alive. In this peaceful domain, she said she encountered a presence she interpreted as divine, one that reviewed her life, her choices, and her struggles. Gent stated she spent what felt like 3 days in this peaceful place before being told she must return. The presence explained that her journey was not over and that she still had a purpose to fulfill on Earth. When she awoke, doctors were astonished by her sudden recovery. She now speaks publicly about her experience, believing she was allowed to witness both darkness and light so she could warn others and offer comfort to those afraid of the unknown. In a rural region of India, a heartbreaking story of loss and superstition has prompted calls for greater public education after a young boy's parents attempted an unusual ritual in hopes of bringing him back to life. The boy, a 4th grade student from Hathras, had lost consciousness after a venomous snake bite. Despite doctors' efforts, they could not save him. When the family received the devastating news, They refused to accept it, insisting that hope remained if they followed traditional revival beliefs practiced by some villagers. The parents brought the child back to their home, where villagers gathered for 3 days to conduct rituals they believed might restore life. The boy was covered with leaves and a layer of cow manure, a practice thought by some to draw out harmful energies. Villagers gently tapped his legs from time to time, watching closely for any sign of movement. Despite the community's desperate dedication, the ritual yielded no results. On the 4th day, local authorities learned of the situation and intervened. The boy's body was taken for proper funerary procedures and later cremated. Officials stated that no charges would be filed against the grieving family, emphasizing that their actions were driven by heartbreak, not malice. However, the incident sparked renewed discussion about the need for educational outreach in rural regions, where traditional beliefs can sometimes overshadow medical guidance. New footage from a live webcam overlooking Scotland's famous Loch Ness has stirred fresh debate among longtime believers and skeptics alike. A dark shape rising several feet above the surface appeared briefly on screen, moving with slow, deliberate motion before disappearing beneath the waves less than a minute later. The anomaly was captured from the Shoreland Lodge's viewpoint, a popular location for monitoring the lake. It emerged shortly after a tourist boat passed through the area, leading some observers to claim the movement could not have been caused by waves alone. Veteran Loch Ness watcher Owen O'Fottigain, known for submitting more than 24 potential sightings since 2018, was among the first to document the event. He described it as one of the clearest shapes he had ever seen and promptly filed it for review in the official Loch Ness Sightings Register. Despite more than 1,000 historical reports, scientific scans from the lake have never produced confirmed evidence of a large unknown creature. Still, supporters of the legend insist the lake's depth and murky waters could easily conceal life that rarely surfaces. For now, the mysterious silhouette remains unexplained, adding another chapter to the world's most enduring cryptozoological mystery. A driver traveling from Orizaba to Nogales in Mexico unintentionally captured a puzzling aerial object in a photograph that has since gained widespread attention online. The driver initially believed he had simply photographed a scenic hill, but while reviewing the images later, he noticed a strange disc-shaped form hovering above the horizon. At first he suspected it might be a smudge or reflection, but the object appeared sharply defined against the sky. After sharing the picture on social media, the image quickly sparked debate. Some commenters suggested the photo might show an unidentified craft passing over the hill at the moment the picture was taken. Others, more skeptical, argued that the shape could have been a trick of the light, a distant aircraft, or even an optical distortion caused by the camera lens. Experts have not yet analyzed the photo, but many viewers insist the object's smooth outline and position in the frame make it difficult to dismiss. Whether it is an unexplained aerial phenomenon or a mundane misinterpretation remains unclear. For now, the mysterious disc has joined the growing archive of puzzling sky sightings that continue to fascinate and divide the online community. The villagers of Farabari, India, awoke to a surreal and unsettling sight just before dawn, a glowing human-like face suspended high in the sky. Some residents froze in awe, others stepped back in fear, but nearly everyone agreed, whatever it was, it didn't look natural. The luminous image hovered for several moments, its features faint yet unmistakably shaped like a face. Villagers speculated that an illuminated object behind cloud cover had created the effect, but many admitted the phenomenon felt far too deliberate, too defined, to be simple trickery of light. What caused the glow remains a mystery. Theories range from a rocket launch reflecting off cloud layers to the presence of an unknown craft passing behind the mist. Others whispered that it might be a manifestation of a paranormal presence, something attempting to reveal itself from beyond the ordinary world. No official explanation has been provided, leaving the villagers to wonder whether the sky will remain silent or whether the strange face will return. A deeply unsettling incident in St. Petersburg, Russia, has drawn nationwide attention after a 13-year-old girl was taken into custody following the death of her mother. According to early reports, the girl and her 46-year-old mother had frequent conflicts, often revolving around time spent online and the girl's passion for a popular multiplayer game. On the day of the tragedy, an argument escalated sharply when the mother restricted the girl's access to the game and limited her ability to leave the apartment. Investigators say the teenager had previously reenacted dramatic confrontations inside the game world, blurring the line between virtual and real emotions. Following the incident, the girl attempted to mislead authorities by claiming that a stranger had entered the home, harmed her mother, and attempted to set the apartment on fire before escaping. However, during questioning she admitted that the story had been fabricated. The case has reignited debate across Russia about online environments, youth mental health, and the pressures facing young players who retreat into virtual worlds during emotional conflicts. Officials are still determining the next steps for the teenager, who is currently under the supervision of child services and mental health specialists. A quiet school in Loei, Philippines, has become the center of a chilling mystery after a student with a reputation for unusual sensitivity reported seeing a dark, ghost-like figure drifting through the hallways. Administrators initially dismissed the claim, but as unease spread among the staff, they decided to perform a traditional cleansing ritual intended to restore calm. The result, however, was far from peaceful. Within days, 14 students suddenly began shouting, trembling, and behaving as though caught in a force no one could see. Teachers struggled to control the situation before rushing the frightened children to a nearby spiritual minister known for assisting in unusual cases. The minister conducted a protective ritual over the group, after which the students gradually regained clarity and were transported to a clinic for observation. The school suspended classes for several days, hoping to prevent further incidents. Local authorities, informed of the events, offered a surprising statement. Officers acknowledged that the children's behavior did not resemble typical panic, and some admitted that an unexplained phenomenon could not be ruled out. A spiritual consultant brought in by the school later declared that the children had likely experienced what he called a response of unseen forces, suggesting that the cleansing ritual may have disturbed something that preferred to remain undisturbed. As of now, classes have resumed, but teachers report that students avoid walking alone, especially in the dim, echoing hall near the old library where the first sighting occurred. In a remote village in Zimbabwe lives the Noda family, once united, ordinary, and deeply respected by their neighbors. Everything changed in 2019 after the passing of the family matriarch, Buyu Menala Panjeti Noda, only months after her husband's death. Locals initially assumed their departure marked the natural closing of a long life. But what followed convinced many that something much darker had awakened. Every year since 2019, a member of the family has died unexpectedly. There is no pattern, no medical link, and no warning. Villagers began whispering about a shadow lingering over the family, watching, waiting. But the losses were only the beginning. After the burial of their parents, members of the family began suffering sudden financial collapse. Businesses failed, jobs disappeared, homes were lost. Long-lasting marriages broke apart overnight, with some spouses leaving cryptic notes urging loved ones not to follow. Arguments erupted between generations. Younger relatives accused elders of inviting trouble through hidden rituals. Elders, shaken and weary, insisted they too were helpless victims of something they could not understand. Neighbors initially believed the chaos was merely an unfortunate streak, until 3 weeks ago. While cleaning the graves of their ancestors, the relatives discovered that the soil above the parents' resting place had been disturbed. Someone had visited the site under the cover of night. Next to the headstone stood a clay pot. Inside were objects that sent a wave of dread through the group, a sharpened metal blade and tightly knotted strips of cloth in multiple colors. Village elders recognized the items immediately. They were tools used in traditional dark rituals meant to bring misfortune, illness, or unending sorrow upon a family. The discovery confirmed the family's worst fears. Someone had wished harm upon them. Whether the source was a human rival or something far more ancient remained unknown. In desperation, the family began searching for a healer or spiritual intermediary capable of severing whatever bond had been placed upon their lineage before another shadow fell upon their home. Today, the Noda household sits in quiet terror each night. As darkness settles over the trees, every creak of the old wooden walls feels like a warning. No one knows who will be next, or whether the chain of tragedy can still be broken. Tonight's first story follows a man who crossed the thin line between life and something far beyond it. In 2018, an American named Joe DeMeo experienced a moment that reshaped his entire existence. While driving late at night, he drifted off for just a second, long enough for his car to veer off the road. The vehicle ignited instantly, leaving the 26-year-old with critical burns over most of his body. Doctors kept him in a deep coma for 3 months, unsure whether he would survive. 2 years later, Joe became the first person to receive a combined face and hands transplant, a medical achievement that saved his life. But what he remembered from the time he spent unconscious became an even bigger mystery. Joe eventually revealed that while he was in that state, he was still aware of the world around him. He heard voices, felt the shifting of his bandages, sensed warmth and cold. At times, discomfort would slip into his dreams, mixing with surreal images. But what he saw in that other place was unlike any dream. Joe described endless rolling hills covered in fog, and walking beside him was his old dog, who had passed years before. The animal looked alive, peaceful, as if nothing had changed. "I don't think it was a dream," Joe later said. "It felt like somewhere you go when everything else fades." Scientists call these experiences near-boundary states, where the mind lingers between awareness and shutdown. But Joe insists nothing about it felt imaginary. He claimed he could sense motion behind him, hear faint footsteps, and feel a presence that seemed to watch him from a distance. As he recovered, relearning how to walk, hold objects, and accept his new reflection, those memories didn't disappear. Instead, they grew sharper, as if that other world refused to let go. Today, Joe lives a second life that medicine helped rebuild. But the memory of those fog-covered hills, and the loyal companion waiting for him there, remains a silent reminder that the border between life and whatever lies beyond may be thinner than we think. Across India, one story has sparked emotional debate about family, tradition, and the unseen consequences of conflict. A young couple, deeply committed to each other, planned to formalize their relationship, but their families stood firmly against it. Beliefs, traditions, and religious differences created a divide neither side could bridge. Tensions escalated, and a devastating incident followed. Authorities later confirmed that the young man lost his life during a confrontation involving members of the girl's family. But what happened next stunned the entire region. Determined to honor the bond she believed was unbreakable, the young woman proceeded with a symbolic wedding ceremony in memory of the man she loved. His family supported her decision. She publicly distanced herself from her own relatives, declaring that some connections cannot be undone by force or fear. The story spread across the country, prompting passionate discussions about cultural expectations and personal choice. Many saw it as a heartbreaking reminder of how powerful and dangerous social pressure can become. Yet even now, the atmosphere around the event remains heavy, as though something unresolved lingers in its wake. visitors to Chile's Lamari Valley captured an image that has fueled debate across the region. While hiking in the mountains, traveler Fair Valderrama Marin and his family spotted an object resting on a slope. At first glance, it looked like a metallic disc reflecting the sunlight, smooth, oddly symmetrical, and appearing almost placed there intentionally. Pictures taken by the family spread quickly online. Many viewers claimed the object resembled a classic craft often reported in unexplained sightings. Skeptics argued it was simply a tent catching the light at the right angle. But when authorities visited the site, they found no signs of hikers, no camp equipment, no footprints, nothing that suggested anyone had been there. To add to the mystery, the object was gone within hours, leaving only an empty patch of earth. Locals say strange glows have been reported in nearby peaks for generations. No official explanation has been released, but for the few who saw the photograph firsthand, the impression remains unsettling. Whatever stood on that slope wasn't supposed to be there. In 2008, a young man named Jordan lost his life during a late-night confrontation. His father, Matthew, a trained psychologist, faced a level of grief he could not overcome. Traditional therapy, reflection, and time offered no relief. Years later, Matthew heard of a controversial technique said to help people cope with deep loss. Its goal was to guide the mind into a state where memories could surface with unusual clarity, sometimes so vividly that individuals reported sensing the presence of loved ones who had passed on. During Matthew's first session, something unexpected happened. In a moment of deep focus, he heard a voice, quiet, familiar, and impossibly clear. It didn't sound like imagination or memory. Instead, it felt as if someone stood just a step away. "Tell Mom. I'm here. It's okay. I love you both." Experts claim such experiences come from the brain retrieving powerful emotional impressions. But Matthew insisted the moment felt real, more real than anything he had felt since his son's passing. Over time, he reported additional moments of what he described as contact. Not visions, but impressions, a sense of presence, a whisper of guidance, a moment of warning or reassurance. The events inspired him to collect similar stories from people around the world. He now works on a book exploring whether the bond between parent and child can continue beyond what is considered the natural boundary of life. For some, his story is a symbol of healing. For others, a chilling possibility that the connection between worlds may not be as distant as believed. A disturbing event in the Indian state of Tripura has left an entire community shaken. At Maharkera High School, a 12-year-old student entered a restroom during class, and within seconds, his scream echoed through the hallway. The boy collapsed, and once conscious, said he saw a dark figure standing inside. The shape, according to him, looked human, except it had no head. Minutes later, 3 girls from an older class entered the same area. All 3 claimed they encountered the same figure. Panic overtook them so severely that each fainted before they could escape. Teachers rushed the 4 children to a nearby hospital. Doctors found no injuries and no signs of contamination. However, psychologists noted intense fear and symptoms matching a severe panic episode. Parents were alarmed immediately. The school stands in a region where strange sightings have been whispered about for years. Some families demanded that the restroom be closed permanently. Others went further, saying the structure should be torn down to prevent further incidents. Specialists advise that the event could be a shared fear response, but the children insist the figure was real, motionless, silent, and positioned as if watching them. Classes have resumed, yet students now avoid the hallway altogether. Many refuse to go anywhere alone. Locals say a tense, heavy feeling hangs over the building at night, and some believe whatever appeared there once may return again. The next story comes from Turkey and challenges the certainty of official conclusions. On January 2nd, 2022, Melek Sert was hospitalized due to complications during the 5th month of pregnancy. After an emergency procedure, medical staff informed the father, Hassan Sert, that the child had not survived. An official report was issued. The family was given the infant, prepared for burial. While traveling to the cemetery, Hassan noticed something unexpected. A faint sound, then movement. The child's chest appeared to rise. The journey changed instantly. The infant was rushed back to the hospital and placed in intensive care, where he remained for 1 week. Despite efforts by doctors, the child passed away days later. The family filed a complaint, stating that basic checks had not been performed initially. Authorities later closed the case, saying no fault was found. Hassan continues to appeal the decision. He maintains that if proper procedures had been followed, his child might be alive today, already 3 years old. The case has reopened discussions about certainty, timing, and how close life can linger to its edge. Sarah and Tom Hawkins moved into a quiet family house with their 2 children, 11-year-old Emma and 8-year-old Joshua. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but within weeks, Sarah began mentioning strange disturbances to friends. At night, footsteps echoed on the staircase while everyone slept. Doors closed on their own, even though the air inside the house was still. Personal items would disappear and later reappear in unfamiliar places. Months passed, and the activity intensified. Objects fell from shelves without warning. Heavy knocks sounded from the kitchen walls late at night. Wet footprints appeared across the floor, as if someone had walked barefoot through the house, though no one had. In 2020, the first major incident occurred. During a family dinner, a heavy plate slid off the table on its own and shattered near the younger child. No one had touched it. Soon after, the family moved away, believing the disturbance was tied to the house. It was not. In the new apartment, strange events followed them. Children's toys activated by themselves at night. Shadows appeared briefly in mirrors. Marks surfaced on the walls, shaped like words, but impossible to read. In 2021, Tom Hawkins lost his life in a sudden road incident. Investigators noted that his car sharply turned on an empty road, as if avoiding something unseen. 1 year later, Emma passed away quietly in her sleep. Medical specialists could not determine a cause. Neighbors later recalled the girl saying weeks earlier, "He told us we weren't supposed to leave." In 2024, Sarah also passed away. Before her death, she left a voice message for a close friend: "If you hear this, don't go back to that house." It follows those who saw it. Authorities found no explanation, but the pattern left behind continues to disturb those familiar with the case. Footage from Brazil shocked viewers nationwide.
Eita, caralho.
Esse cara não vai fazer nada, vai fazer
Porra nenhuma, mano. Olha esse tremendo lá os pés dele lá.
Meu Deus, desceu. Ai, meu Deus, olha. Olha, meu. Ai, meu Deus, pra que subiu ali?
Como é que é? Olha, já pegou ela.
Ai, meu Deus, pra que subiu? Ai, filho.
Já pegou ele, já pegou.
A 19-year-old man entered a restricted zoo enclosure after climbing a tall barrier. He descended into the area and approached a large predator. Staff responded immediately, but the incident ended within moments. The zoo in João Pessoa was temporarily closed during the investigation. Officials remind visitors that barriers exist not as decoration, but as the final line between safety and irreversible outcomes. a troubling event unfolded in the Russian city of Kirov. A 67-year-old retired man was stopped inside a store over an unpaid item of minimal value. According to reports, a confrontation followed involving store staff and security. Witnesses state the man was restrained while waiting for authorities. When officers arrived, he was unresponsive. Medical examination later revealed an existing heart condition. However, investigators opened a case related to unintended loss of life. The man's daughter stated that those involved continued working at the store and that the family received no apology or acknowledgement. The investigation remains active, raising concerns over restraint practices and responsibility in everyday conflicts. The final story tonight comes from Ecuador and remains unexplained. Journalist Marlon Torres was traveling at night from Shushufindi to the province of El Oro. The road was empty, the air calm, visibility clear. After passing a toll booth, a warning signal activated inside his vehicle, the system that detects passengers in the back seat. First on one side, then the other. Marlon was alone. He checked the rear seats. Empty. Moments later, the air inside the car turned cold. A wave of nausea followed. At a nearby fuel station, the indicators vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. He called his partner and continued driving. Less than a minute later, both indicators activated again, simultaneously. Marlon accelerated, focused only on reaching his destination. Upon arrival, he noticed something unsettling. The coins he had tossed earlier now sat neatly stacked on the driver's door. Days later, a full inspection found no technical issues. The system was functioning normally. Marlon has never claimed to know what happened that night. He only insists on one detail: he was not alone. Tonight's first report comes from Florida, where residents captured something in the sky that defied quick explanation. At first, the footage seemed ordinary. A pale formation drifted slowly among heavy gray clouds, blending into the overcast sky. Nothing appeared unusual, until moments later. Witnesses say the object began to change. The bright mass appeared to compress inward, as if pulled by an unseen force. Its shape tightened, shrinking rapidly, no longer behaving like vapor or mist. Then, without warning, the glowing form condensed into a small, concentrated point of light. Seconds later, it accelerated upward and vanished from sight. The entire sequence unfolded so quickly that many viewers struggled to understand what they were seeing. The video spread rapidly across social media, triggering intense debate. Some suggested a rare atmospheric phenomenon or a visual distortion. Others proposed plasma formations, experimental technology, or something entirely unidentified. So far, no official statements have been released by meteorologists or local authorities. Specialists note that such movement and transformation are not typical of known cloud behavior, but caution against conclusions without full analysis. As the clip continues to circulate, one question remains unanswered. Was this a rare natural event, or something still beyond explanation? A deeply unsettling story has emerged from Russia, raising serious concerns about online influence and parental judgment. A 36-year-old content creator, known online for promoting alternative parenting ideas, shared a video that quickly shocked viewers. The footage shows her demonstrating what she described as an experiment involving her young child and a household vacuum-sealed bag. The situation escalated when air was actively removed from the bag while the child remained inside. Only after the child called out did the demonstration stop. What alarmed viewers even more was the caption accompanying the video, written in a joking tone, suggesting that airflow could be blocked, even in a basket. Many interpreted the message as disturbingly careless. The video spread rapidly, prompting widespread outrage and concern. Shortly after, child welfare authorities became involved, confirming that the family is now under official review. Experts warn that social media challenges and shock content can blur the line between performance and real danger, sometimes with irreversible consequences. A frightening incident in the United States has reignited debate about human responsibility in wild environments. In a southern state, a woman allowed her dog to enter a river known to be home to large reptiles. The animal played near the shoreline, unaware of the hidden risk.
There's a fucking alligator coming. Oh, are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? Oh my fucking god.
Despite shouted warnings, the situation changed in seconds. A powerful shape surfaced from the water, seized the dog, and disappeared beneath the surface. Emergency responders acted quickly, and the animal was later recovered and rushed to a veterinary clinic. Doctors described the condition as serious but stable. The incident triggered heated discussions online. Many criticized the decision to treat a wild river as a safe space, emphasizing that nature does not offer second chances. Local residents remind visitors that calm water does not mean safety, especially where predators are known to live. A teenager was hospitalized after following a hazardous trend circulating on social media. According to reports, the 17-year-old attempted to improve his health after being influenced by a video that encouraged drinking his own blood. Believing it would raise iron levels, he carried out the act without medical guidance. Soon after, his condition worsened rapidly. Fever, severe discomfort, and alarming symptoms followed. His mother contacted emergency services, and he was admitted to intensive care with acute poisoning. Doctors were able to stabilize his condition. The teenager later admitted that he had trusted online advice over professional guidance. Medical specialists described the act as extremely dangerous and emphasized that viral content can distort reality, especially for younger audiences. After recovery, the patient was referred for psychological evaluation. A disturbing story has come to light in New Hampshire, one that could easily serve as the plot of a horror film. Cedric Lodge, a 58-year-old former morgue manager, used his position to run an unusual and unsettling operation. His job gave him nearly unrestricted access to the facility, and he secretly took certain items to sell them privately. Buyers reportedly sought these souvenirs for bizarre and occult purposes that most people would find difficult to comprehend. In court, the prosecutor stressed that there should be no leniency for someone who committed crimes for the entertainment of what was described as a community of strange individuals. Cedric was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while his wife, Denise, received a 1-year sentence for her role in assisting him. The case serves as another reminder that the world is full of dark secrets, and that some of them may be better left undiscovered. The final story tonight comes from Japan and reveals a mystery hidden in plain sight for years. In the city of Otsu, social services noticed something unusual. An elderly couple had completely vanished from daily life. No contact, no sightings, no explanation. Despite their absence, their home appeared unchanged. Lights were maintained. The yard remained orderly. Time passed, years, without questions being answered. When authorities eventually entered the property, the discovery was deeply disturbing. In the garden, beneath carefully tended soil, investigators found 2 burial sites containing the remains of an elderly man and woman. Inside the house lived their 50-year-old son, who had never reported their deaths. Investigators have yet to determine when the parents passed away, how it happened, or why their son chose silence over disclosure. Motives remain unclear: fear, isolation, dependency, or something darker. The man has been taken into custody. The house now stands empty, its quiet walls holding years of unspoken truth. Neighbors say the property always felt strange, as if it was waiting for someone to finally look beneath the surface. A disturbing case from the United States has resurfaced months after it first occurred. What happened in 2024 remained largely unnoticed, until new investigation footage and details began circulating online, sending a chill through viewers. The quiet suburb of Coon Rapids, Minnesota, appeared no different from any other peaceful neighborhood. On that day, a man dressed in a UPS delivery uniform approached a residential home carrying a package. Everything looked routine. No alarms. No suspicion. Just another delivery. But investigators later confirmed that the uniform was a disguise. Surveillance footage shows the courier calmly entering the house. Within minutes, the situation inside turned into something far darker. Several people were present, including adults and children. What followed was not a robbery, but a deliberate act of violence. Authorities later confirmed that 3 residents lost their lives. Even more disturbing, some of the events were witnessed by children inside the home. One child reportedly tried to shield a younger family member after realizing the danger was not random, but intentional. Police later detained a 39-year-old suspect. Items found in his vehicle confirmed the delivery setup had been staged. The court sentenced him to life in prison with no possibility of release. The case is now spreading online again, frightening viewers even more than when it first occurred, because it delivers a chilling reminder: danger does not always arrive looking dangerous. Sometimes, it knocks wearing a uniform. A corporate celebration in Moscow ended in a medical emergency that shocked both guests and professionals. During the event, a man was offered a specialty drink prepared using liquid nitrogen, a technique sometimes used for visual effect. Experts note that such drinks are only safe after the substance fully evaporates. In this case, that step was ignored. The man was encouraged to drink immediately. Within moments, he became seriously unwell. Emergency services were called, and he was rushed to the hospital, where doctors performed urgent surgery. Medical specialists later confirmed that the cause was improper preparation and lack of warning. The incident reignited public debate about extreme culinary trends and the risks of turning science into entertainment without proper safeguards. What was meant to impress nearly became fatal, turning a celebration into a warning. A routine NASA live stream unexpectedly triggered widespread panic online. During the broadcast, viewers noticed dozens of glowing objects appearing on screen. They moved unpredictably, changing direction in ways that seemed almost reactive. Screen recordings quickly spread across social media. Speculation followed instantly. Some suggested space debris or digital interference. Others pointed to atmospheric effects. What unsettled many viewers was the movement itself: short bursts, sudden shifts, and no clear pattern. The objects did not follow standard orbital paths. NASA has issued no official explanation. Some believe it was a simple technical artifact. Others suspect the feed briefly showed something not meant for public view. Whether it was a glitch or something unexplained, the footage remains unanswered. And that uncertainty is what continues to disturb viewers the most. A tragic accident involving a young child has drawn attention to an overlooked danger. In China's Zhejiang province, a 3-year-old boy was given bubble tea by his mother while playing on a trampoline. The drink contained tapioca pearls, which experts say are not suitable for small children. While jumping, the child began to choke. Emergency measures were attempted, but the texture of the pearls made rescue impossible. The child passed away before help could arrive. The father later stated that the shopping center should have provided warnings about age restrictions and eating during physical activity. Public opinion remains divided. Some sympathize deeply with the grieving parents. Others argue the incident highlights a lack of awareness rather than faulty products. The tragedy has since sparked calls for clearer safety warnings, because some dangers hide behind everyday treats. A private car sale turned into a fatal trap. A 30-year-old man named Vladimir listed his Kia Optima at a premium price. Soon after, he was contacted by potential buyers from another city. They suggested discussing the deal in a residential courtyard. The buyers arrived in a vehicle without license plates. When Vladimir entered their car, investigators say he was attacked. He did not survive. The suspects attempted to erase evidence and fled using his vehicle. Concern grew when Vladimir failed to return home. His pregnant wife contacted authorities. The next day, the car was found in another city. 2 repeat offenders, both 23 years old, were arrested. The case stands as a grim warning. Trust, when misplaced, can be exploited in the most devastating way. In China's Zhejiang province, an 86-year-old woman was known for her strength and independence. Despite her age, she worked daily in the fields and rarely complained of illness. Locals believed she would live many more years. Then, without warning, she fell severely ill. Her condition deteriorated rapidly, marked by extreme weakness and physical distress. Doctors were unable to save her, and her passing shocked the entire community. After the funeral, her son, an elderly man himself, decided to perform an ancient ritual. According to tradition, sleeping in the bed of the deceased was believed to help the soul find peace. Shortly after doing so, he began experiencing the same symptoms that had claimed his mother. Doctors intervened in time and uncovered the real cause, a virus transmitted by a tick bite. The illness had taken the woman's life, and then passed to her son through contaminated bedding. The story sparked nationwide discussion. What was meant as an act of love nearly resulted in another loss. It became a grim reminder that tradition, when misunderstood, can carry unseen dangers. A scene usually reserved for classic horror cinema became reality off the coast of California. On December 21st, during an early morning training swim near Santa Cruz, American triathlete Erica Fox disappeared beneath the surface of the ocean. The incident unfolded in front of fellow athletes, including her husband. A group of 13 swimmers had entered the cold coastal waters for a routine endurance session. Conditions appeared manageable. Visibility was low, but nothing seemed unusual. Then everything changed. Witnesses reported sudden movement beneath the surface. A large marine predator, its exact species still unconfirmed, surfaced briefly before pulling Erica under. Her husband, swimming roughly 100 meters behind, saw the moment unfold but was powerless to intervene. For a brief second, the shape surfaced again, then vanished into deeper water. Erica Fox was never seen alive again. Search operations continued for more than a week. Days after Christmas, remains were discovered near Davenport Beach, nearly 40 kilometers from the initial location. The ocean, calm on the surface, had once again reminded the world that it follows its own rules and offers no warnings. Investigators in the Moscow region are examining a case that has shocked even experienced professionals. A 39-year-old woman renting a room in Liberty had ongoing conflicts with the apartment's owner and his guests. According to reports, loud gatherings were frequent, often lasting through the night. Attempts to resolve the situation peacefully failed. What followed was calculated. Authorities state that the woman deliberately created a dangerous situation inside the apartment and left, securing the door behind her. The fire spread rapidly. 3 people inside did not escape. The suspect was later detained. Criminal charges have been filed, and the investigation continues. The case serves as a grim reminder: unresolved conflict, when ignored long enough, can turn ordinary spaces into sealed traps. In the coastal resort town of Marmaris, Turkey, locals speak quietly about a man they believe should not still be alive. Mehmet Ovet, 47, is known among residents as the man who keeps returning. His encounters with danger began in childhood. At just 7 years old, he lost consciousness while swimming near anchored boats in the harbor. He was pulled from the water without signs of life, only to be revived moments later in front of stunned bystanders. Years passed, but the pattern continued. As a teenager, he fell from a terrace several stories high and remained unconscious for days before awakening. As an adult, he survived multiple electrical incidents that required emergency resuscitation. Later came a violent confrontation that left him hospitalized for months. Doctors did not expect recovery. He recovered. In 2014, a high-speed collision with a minibus destroyed his motorcycle. Surgeons fought to stabilize him through brain swelling, internal injuries, and extensive fractures. He spent more than 2 months in intensive care. He survived again. Even recently, after a severe fall during a mountain hike, he remains alive. Ovet does not describe his life as cursed. He claims some people are not meant to leave early. Those who know his story ask the same question in hushed voices: how many times can someone cross the line and still come back? A routine walk ended in irreversible loss on a Moscow street. A woman and her young daughter were crossing the road when they entered the blind zone of a large truck. The driver did not see them in time. The child managed to move away. Her mother did not. Emergency services arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. The woman passed away at the scene. The girl, now in the care of specialists, is receiving psychological support. Authorities are reviewing traffic safety measures in the area. Once again, a familiar warning echoes through city streets: what cannot be seen can still be dangerously close. A woman in the United States has shared a chilling account following a medical emergency that left her unconscious for nearly 2 weeks. Camilla Gent spent 13 days in a coma after a severe infection led her to an operating room in 2013. Doctors fought to stabilize her condition. When she finally regained consciousness, she described an experience she insists was not a dream. According to Gent, the moment her awareness faded, she felt herself descending into a dark realm. She claims she found herself in a place of fear and confusion, surrounded by hostile figures that tormented her senses. She described overwhelming pressure, distorted visions, and relentless dread, including disturbing illusions involving her loved ones. Then, the scene abruptly changed. Gent says a massive hand appeared from above and pulled her away. Moments later, she described being lifted upward by 2 radiant figures into a completely different realm. The environment, she said, was calm and luminous, fields covered in shimmering grass and gently moving flowers. There, Gent claims she encountered divine figures seated in light, surrounded by peace and warmth. She described the atmosphere not as judgmental, but deeply reflective. According to her account, she remained in this place for what felt like 3 days. During that time, she says her life was reviewed, her mistakes, struggles, and personal trials examined not as failures, but as lessons that shaped who she became. Gent reports that she was then sent back, awakening in her hospital bed with what doctors later described as unexpected improvement in her condition. She recalls a final warning that every heart is known and nothing is hidden. Today, Gent believes the experience carried a purpose. She says she was shown both fear and peace so she could warn others about the consequences of their choices and remind them that redemption, in her words, is never out of reach. Medical professionals emphasize that near-death experiences can be influenced by severe illness and trauma. But Gent remains firm in her belief that what she witnessed was real, and her story continues to divide those who hear it between faith, fear, and the unknown. In China's Zhejiang province, an 86-year-old woman was known for her strength and independence. Despite her age, she worked daily in the fields and rarely complained of illness. Locals believed she would live many more years. Then, without warning, she fell severely ill. Her condition deteriorated rapidly, marked by extreme weakness and physical distress. Doctors were unable to save her, and her passing shocked the entire community. After the funeral, her son, an elderly man himself, decided to perform an ancient ritual. According to tradition, sleeping in the bed of the deceased was believed to help the soul find peace. Shortly after doing so, he began experiencing the same symptoms that had claimed his mother. Doctors intervened in time and uncovered the real cause, a virus transmitted by a tick bite. The illness had taken the woman's life, and then passed to her son through contaminated bedding. The story sparked nationwide discussion. What was meant as an act of love nearly resulted in another loss. It became a grim reminder that tradition, when misunderstood, can carry unseen dangers. A routine NASA live stream unexpectedly triggered widespread panic online. During the broadcast, viewers noticed dozens of glowing objects appearing on screen. They moved unpredictably, changing direction in ways that seemed almost reactive. Screen recordings quickly spread across social media. Speculation followed instantly. Some suggested space debris or digital interference. Others pointed to atmospheric effects. What unsettled many viewers was the movement itself, short bursts, sudden shifts, and no clear pattern. The objects did not follow standard orbital paths. NASA has issued no official explanation. Some believe it was a simple technical artifact. Others suspect the feed briefly showed something not meant for public view. Whether it was a glitch or something unexplained, the footage remains unanswered, and that uncertainty is what continues to disturb viewers the most. In recent weeks, a well-known Colombian music artist, Yaisen Jimenez, reportedly spoke openly about a recurring nightmare that refused to leave him alone. Night after night, the same vision returned, an aircraft failing mid-flight, panic inside the cabin, and a sense that the ending was already written. Friends and colleagues noticed a change. The 34-year-old performer appeared increasingly withdrawn, burdened by fear he could not fully explain. In private conversations, he admitted that the dream felt less like imagination and more like a warning. In some versions, he tried to alert the crew. In others, the outcome could not be changed. News reports, flashing lights, and headlines announcing a disaster appeared even within the dream itself. On January 10, 2026, a twin-engine Piper Navajo departed from Pipa Airport in Colombia's Tundama province. On board were the musician, members of his band, and the flight crew. Moments after takeoff, witnesses on the ground saw the aircraft lose control and come down rapidly. The incident left no survivors among the 6 people on board. Only afterward did Jimenez's earlier words resurface. In recorded interviews weeks before the flight, he spoke of receiving 3 signs he failed to understand in time. He sought professional help, struggled with anxiety, and attempted to silence the fear. It did not work. Today, his story is shared not only as a tragedy, but as a chilling reminder. Sometimes, the mind senses danger long before reality catches up, and not every warning arrives loudly enough to stop what is coming. A maternity hospital in the Russian city of Novokuznetsk became the focus of national attention after a deeply disturbing series of events during the New Year holiday period. Over a short span of days, 9 newborns passed away under medical care. Official reports indicate that several of the infants were receiving intensive treatment at the time. The pattern raised immediate concern among health authorities and investigators. The facility was placed under quarantine, officially due to seasonal illness precautions. Behind closed doors, inspections began. A criminal investigation was launched to determine whether procedural failures or sanitation violations played a role. Hospital leadership was temporarily removed from duty while documentation, equipment, and staff actions were reviewed. A court later ordered the maternity ward closed for 90 days to allow repairs and safety improvements. Parents across the region now ask the same unanswered question: how could a place meant to welcome life fall so suddenly silent? For months, something unsettling unfolded at Mount Moriah Cemetery in Philadelphia, one of the city's oldest burial grounds. Visitors and nearby residents reported strange nighttime activity among the aging mausoleums. Shadows moved where no one should be. Sounds echoed between headstones long after the gates were closed. At first, the reports were dismissed as imagination. Then investigators confirmed the unthinkable. Historic burial sites had been disturbed. Human remains, some over a century old, were missing. After a prolonged search, authorities detained a man seen leaving the cemetery late at night carrying tools and a heavy bag. Searches of his residence and a rented storage space uncovered more than 100 bones and skulls taken from the site. No clear motive has been established. Officials have not disclosed what the individual intended to do with the remains. Mount Moriah is the final resting place for hundreds of thousands. Now, its tree-lined paths carry an added weight, the sense that even the dead were no longer left in peace. A quiet coastal community in Ecuador awoke to a scene that quickly spread fear far beyond its shoreline. In the fishing village of Puerto Lopez, residents discovered a disturbing display along the beach. Objects believed to be connected to multiple individuals were found suspended from wooden posts, accompanied by a written warning. Authorities believe the display may be linked to organized groups seeking to send a message. Law enforcement sealed off the area and launched an immediate investigation. The beach, usually filled with tourists and fishermen, fell silent. Locals described an atmosphere of unease, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Officials continue working to identify those involved and determine responsibility. Increased patrols remain in place as the community struggles to process what was left behind. Once again, a familiar truth echoes across the coastline. Sometimes, danger does not hide, it announces itself. Doctors in the Russian city of Ekaterinburg are being credited with what many now call a medical resurrection. Emergency teams rushed a man to City Clinical Hospital number 23 after a critical incident involving a firearm-related injury to the chest. Multiple projectiles had entered his body, one of them lodging dangerously close to the heart. Internal pressure rapidly increased, and his condition deteriorated within minutes. During surgery, the situation escalated beyond standard protocols. The patient's heart stopped, not once, but twice. With no time to spare, surgeons manually stimulated the heart, maintaining circulation through direct compression while removing the foreign object and repairing the damage. For nearly 40 minutes, the man remained in a state doctors classify as clinical death. Blood transfusions were administered. The operating room worked against time itself. Against expectations, the heart resumed a stable rhythm. After more than a week under assisted breathing in intensive care, the patient was transferred to a general ward. Recovery is ongoing, but the outcome has already been described as extraordinary. Medical professionals emphasize that such cases are exceptionally rare. For many who followed the story, the question lingers quietly. Where was he during those minutes when his heart was still, and what, if anything, brought him back? In a quiet German neighborhood, an unsettling scene unfolded behind a closed door. Neighbors had noticed an unusual smell coming from an apartment but assumed it was a plumbing issue or spoiled food. Weeks passed before authorities were finally alerted. Inside, they found a man who had passed away due to illness, alone and unnoticed. With no one checking in and no assistance arriving, time continued to move forward, silently. The man's only companion was his pet cat. Experts later explained that in extreme isolation, animals may act on instinct to survive. By the time the apartment was opened, the situation had reached a disturbing conclusion for both owner and pet. The case sparked public discussion across the country about loneliness, social isolation, and how easily someone can disappear without anyone realizing it. Sometimes, the most frightening stories are not about violence, but about silence. A family in northern Thailand lived through a nightmare that sounded impossible until it wasn't. Relatives of a 48-year-old man received official confirmation that he had passed away. Documents were issued. Arrangements were made. Religious rites were completed. A funeral was held. The family mourned, believing they had said their final goodbye. 2 weeks later, the front door opened. The man stood there alive. Shock turned to fear as relatives struggled to understand what they were seeing. Emergency services were called. Authorities were notified. An investigation began immediately. Officials later confirmed that a critical identification error had occurred. The individual laid to rest was not the family member, but someone else entirely. The grave was reopened. Remains were transferred to the correct relatives. Questions followed. How could such a mistake happen, and how many steps failed before the truth was uncovered? For this family, grief turned into disbelief, and the idea of closure was forever changed. In the United States, a long-delayed court decision brought closure to a case described as deeply disturbing. A California man was sentenced to life in prison for the killing of his former spouse. The case, though resolved earlier, only recently became public knowledge. According to court documents, the woman had attempted to rebuild her life after filing for separation and moving to a relative's home with her children. Investigators say the accused tracked her down and confronted her when she was alone. After the murder, the man attempted to cover up the crime. He wrapped the body in a blanket, transported it to a remote area near Little Rock, and buried it. The following day, he returned to the burial site and, as he later admitted to investigators, desecrated the body before burying the remains again. Prosecutors emphasized the lack of remorse shown during the investigation and trial. The sentence ensures the man will never return to society. The case remains a stark reminder that the most dangerous threat is often not a stranger, but someone once trusted. In one of the coldest cities on Earth, a moment of bravado nearly turned fatal. In Yakutsk, Russia, where winter temperatures routinely fall below -50 degrees Celsius, a foreign tourist decided to test his limits. Surrounded by locals, the man entered an opening cut into thick ice, a tradition meant for experienced participants, not curiosity seekers. The reaction was immediate. The extreme cold triggered an intense physical shock. Breathing became difficult, the heart raced, and muscle control weakened within seconds. The man was pulled out almost instantly, but the damage had already begun. Medical staff later confirmed that only rapid intervention prevented a tragedy. Even brief exposure to such conditions can overwhelm the human body before it has time to react. Yakutsk is known for its unforgiving climate. In winter, the air itself becomes a threat, and mistakes are not forgiven. Locals respect the cold, visitors often underestimate it. This incident now serves as a warning. Nature does not care about confidence, cameras, or challenges. In extreme cold, survival is measured in seconds. Authorities in Istanbul are investigating a disturbing discovery that has shaken the city. Early in the morning, a man collecting recyclable paper opened a public waste container and immediately realized something was wrong. Inside, wrapped tightly in household fabric, was the body of a woman. Parts were missing, and the scene suggested an intentional attempt to conceal the truth rather than an accident. Police quickly sealed off the area. Forensic teams arrived, followed by detectives from the Major Crimes Division. Using fingerprint records, investigators identified the victim as a 37-year-old woman from Uzbekistan who had been living in the city. According to preliminary findings, the incident may have followed a personal conflict. Investigators believe someone known to the victim was involved. Shortly after the discovery, 2 foreign nationals attempted to leave the country but were stopped at the airport. A local citizen was later taken into custody as well. Officials continue to reconstruct the final hours leading up to the incident. Witnesses are being questioned, surveillance footage is under review, and authorities are urging anyone with information to come forward. Istanbul, a city of millions, woke up to a chilling reminder. Danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it is hidden in plain sight. Authorities in Bangkok are reviewing a disturbing incident after a 65-year-old woman unexpectedly regained consciousness just minutes before her planned cremation. What was supposed to be a final farewell turned into a moment of shock inside a local temple, leaving witnesses shaken and officials demanding answers. The event unfolded in the province of Nonthaburi, just outside the Thai capital. According to the woman's brother, she had been bedridden for nearly 2 years and stopped showing any signs of awareness 2 days prior. Believing she had peacefully passed away, the man placed her in a coffin and drove toward a medical center where she had previously expressed a desire to donate her organs. The hospital, however, refused to accept the body due to the lack of an official death certificate. From there, the brother transported the coffin to a nearby temple for cremation. As the monks began reviewing details of the ceremony, a faint, rhythmic knocking sound echoed from inside the coffin. When temple workers hesitantly opened the lid, the attendees froze. The woman was alive. Staff members later explained that she had likely been knocking for some time but went unheard amid the preparations. The revived woman was immediately examined and transferred to a nearby clinic for urgent care. Temple representatives stated they would cover all medical expenses, expressing relief that the mistake was caught before the ceremony began. Officials are now attempting to determine how the woman's condition was misinterpreted and why no medical confirmation had been requested prior to transportation. Local health departments warn that even in remote areas, families should always seek official verification before declaring a loved one deceased. What began as a night of laughter and flashing lights turned into a scene of pure terror at a crowded fairground in Haryana, India. Thousands had gathered for rides and entertainment when a massive swing attraction suddenly malfunctioned. A side support structure failed without warning, sending the ride crashing downward at full speed. Screams replaced music. Joy turned into chaos. 1 person was killed instantly. 13 others were injured, some critically, as twisted metal and human bodies hit the ground almost simultaneously. Witnesses described people being thrown through the air, others trapped and unable to move, while panic spread across the fairgrounds in seconds. Emergency crews arrived to a scene many compared to a nightmare: crying children, blood-stained platforms, and stunned silence where excitement once lived. The incident is now under investigation, but for many, the damage is permanent. A place meant for fun became a reminder: even moments of happiness can collapse without warning. One of the most disturbing criminal cases in U.S. funeral history has reached its conclusion in Colorado. Funeral home owner John Halford was sentenced to 40 years in prison for abusing the trust of grieving families and desecrating the dead. Over 4 years, Halford stored 189 decomposing bodies inside his funeral home: adults, infants, and even fetal remains. None were properly preserved. Some were stacked, others left to decay at room temperature. Families were given fake ashes, often nothing more than dry concrete, while believing their loved ones had been cremated with dignity. Investigators described overwhelming odors, insect infestations, and floors soaked with fluids from decomposition. Neighbors reported the smell long before authorities entered the building. In court, relatives spoke of relentless nightmares, visions of what may have happened behind closed doors, of bodies abandoned and forgotten. Identifying the victims required DNA analysis, fingerprints, and forensic reconstruction. The case stands as a brutal reminder: even death does not guarantee peace, not when greed finds its way into the final goodbye. In a small region of India, a medical tragedy has revived humanity's oldest fears. 3 months ago, a 27-year-old man was bitten by a dog. At first, the wound seemed minor. No one suspected what was coming. By late January, his behavior changed dramatically. He began moving on all fours, bared his teeth, produced inhuman screams that terrified neighbors. Witnesses reported him biting metal bars, attacking people nearby, and reacting violently to light and sound, as if something inside him had replaced what once made him human. Authorities eventually captured him. In the hospital, he was restrained and sedated, but doctors could do nothing. The diagnosis was confirmed: rabies. He died shortly after. The case has shocked the region, reviving ancient legends of humans becoming beasts after infection. While science explains the cause, the images left behind are harder to erase. Nature, once again, proved it does not need myths to create monsters. A mysterious video recorded by a U.S. military Reaper drone has resurfaced, igniting fresh fear and speculation across the internet. The footage shows 3 glowing spheres moving silently through the sky in a perfect triangular formation. Their motion appears controlled, deliberate, and unerringly precise. At one moment, one of the objects briefly falls behind, only to surge forward at an impossible speed and rejoin the formation without resistance or turbulence. The recording was made on August 23, 2012, above the Persian Gulf, but remained largely unnoticed for years. Now, as the footage spreads, experts and viewers alike are questioning what exactly was captured. The U.S. Department of Defense officially classified the objects as UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, ruling out conventional explanations such as birds, weather balloons, drones, or known aircraft. The behavior of the objects mirrors the infamous Pentagon-released videos from 2020, where Navy pilots reported encounters with craft capable of extreme acceleration and impossible maneuvers. More than a decade later, science and military intelligence still offer no clear answers. The sky remains silent, and whatever was flying there may still be watching. A chilling scandal has shaken St. Petersburg, exposing a crime hidden behind sterile walls and medical authority. At Alexander Hospital, investigators uncovered a secret operation involving illegal organ trafficking. Pathologists were selling organs from deceased patients to private clinics for experimental use in cosmetic procedures, surgery, and dentistry. Autopsies were performed without proper documentation. Consent was ignored, and when families requested to view their loved ones, bodies were quietly replaced to conceal missing organs. The alleged mastermind was the head of the pathology department, now under arrest along with several buyers who paid the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of rubles per body. Residents are struggling to comprehend how such acts went unnoticed for so long. Each detail revealed by investigators reads like a scene from a psychological thriller: secret dissections, falsified records, exchanged corpses, and large sums of money changing hands. The case raises an unsettling question: when trust is placed in institutions meant to protect the dead, who ensures the dead are truly at rest? Authorities in the northern Italian province of Mantua have uncovered one of the most disturbing fraud cases in recent years. A 57-year-old healthcare worker allegedly concealed the passing of his elderly mother for nearly 3 years in order to continue receiving her pension. After her natural death in 2022, the man lived alone in a rural home and used his medical training to preserve her remains. When her identification card expired earlier this year, he reportedly attempted to renew it himself by disguising as her, entering a municipal office in a wig, makeup, and women's clothing. The unusual appearance caught the attention of staff, who immediately alerted authorities. Police followed him home, where they found his mother's preserved remains stored inside the house. He now faces charges including identity misuse, document falsification, and financial fraud. Italian officials noted that similar cases have occurred before, including a 2024 incident in which another individual stored a relative's remains to continue receiving benefits. Authorities emphasize that financial desperation and isolation in rural regions often contribute to such unusual attempts to hide the truth. The investigation continues as prosecutors attempt to determine the exact timeline of events and whether anyone else was aware of the situation. The first report tonight comes from Russia, where an ordinary winter evening turned fatal without warning. Late last night, near a residential apartment block, a large sheet of ice broke free from a rooftop. It struck 2 young women walking below. One of them, a 19-year-old, was killed instantly. The second survived with minor injuries and was treated on scene. Witnesses described hearing a sharp crack above them, followed by silence. Emergency services arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. Authorities have opened a criminal investigation. Officials are now examining whether building maintenance failures or ignored safety warnings led to the collapse. In many regions, winter hazards are routine, but this case serves as a reminder that danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes, it simply falls. One of the most disturbing investigations in recent memory continues tonight in Kenya. Prosecutors have filed new charges against the leader of a religious sect and 7 of his closest followers, connecting them to the deaths of 52 people. The bodies were discovered buried in shallow graves in the southeastern part of the country in 2025. The group operated under the name Good News International Church, led by a self-proclaimed pastor known as Mackenzie. According to authorities, the organization functioned as an apocalyptic cult. Followers were told the end of the world was imminent, and that the only path to salvation was voluntary starvation. Adults were pressured to stop eating. Parents were instructed to withhold food from their own children, believing death would lead them more quickly to heaven. The investigation began in the Shakahola forest, located in Kilifi County. Police initially expected to find a handful of victims. Instead, as exhumations continued, the numbers kept rising. By 2025, 2 years after the first graves were uncovered, more than 400 bodies had been recovered from the forest. Mackenzie has previously faced charges related to murder and terrorism and denies all wrongdoing. Authorities say the full scale of the tragedy is still unfolding, and the investigation remains active. The Shakahola case has become a symbol of how fear and promises of salvation can be weaponized, with deadly consequences. Tonight's next report comes from Ukraine, where a case of hidden cruelty has sparked nationwide outrage. A 17-year-old girl with Down syndrome and a first-degree disability spent months living in physical restraint. Investigators say her foster mother regularly chained her by the arm and leg during the day. At night, she was tied to her bed, unable to move freely. The girl lived in a family-type children's home, a place meant to provide safety and care. Instead, the abuse became routine. The truth emerged by chance. One night, the woman reportedly fell asleep while intoxicated. The teenager managed to escape the house and make it onto the street, where she approached strangers for help. Police were called. What they found inside confirmed her account. Criminal proceedings have been opened. The woman faces charges for the illegal deprivation of liberty of a minor and could receive up to 5 years in prison. The victim is now under medical and psychological supervision. Specialists say recovery will take time. Across the country, people are asking how such treatment could remain hidden, and how a home meant to protect the vulnerable became a place of confinement. Tonight's next story sounds like folklore, but unfolded in real life, in North Carolina. In the quiet city of Newton, police arrested a 25-year-old woman and her 54-year-old mother after doctors uncovered disturbing injuries on 2 small children, aged 1 and 2. Medical staff documented burns, bite marks, and multiple fractures. But the most alarming discovery came through toxicology reports. Both toddlers tested positive for fentanyl, a synthetic opioid so potent that even microscopic amounts can be lethal. During questioning, the women offered an explanation that stunned investigators. They claimed the injuries were caused not by human hands, but by ghosts. According to their statements, the apartment was allegedly haunted. The women said they had used a Ouija board to communicate with spirits, after which strange events began. They reported children screaming at night, unexplained disturbances, and injuries appearing by morning. Investigators rejected the story. Prosecutors say the children were deliberately denied medical care and exposed to extreme danger through reckless neglect. Court documents also reference a third adult who previously lived in the home and died earlier this year. Both women are being held in the Catawba County Jail, facing multiple felony charges related to child abuse and serious bodily harm. Residents of Newton remain shaken. Behind the talk of spirits and shadows, authorities say, lies a far darker and very real explanation, one that will now be decided in court. The final story tonight resurfaced online recently, but the incident itself occurred years ago in China. A 60-year-old farmer working in a field in Zhejiang province was bitten on the hand by a snake. Believing the venom to be fatal, the man acted immediately and drastically. Using improvised tools, he amputated his own index finger to prevent the poison from spreading. He then bandaged the wound and traveled to the nearest hospital on his own. Doctors stabilized him and delivered unexpected news. The snake, they said, was not venomous. The amputation had been unnecessary. The man survived, but the finger could not be recovered. It was left behind at the site of the bite. Medical professionals later commented that panic, not venom, caused the greatest harm. The story remains a stark example of how fear, combined with isolation and misinformation, can lead to irreversible decisions. In Georgia, one of the country's most disturbing unexplained phenomena has resurfaced. The events began in 2016, in the rural villages of Kumasai, Koda, and nearby areas of Lower Kartli. Residents began reporting nighttime encounters. They described figures walking silently through yards and narrow roads. These figures appeared human, but not entirely. Witnesses consistently described the same features: tall, thin bodies, dark robes, faces stretched unnaturally long, thick facial hair beginning unusually high on the face, and their eyes. Witnesses said the figures stared directly at them, without blinking, without emotion. One of the few known videos shows a dark, thin shape moving across a field. Its movement appears unnatural, too smooth, too controlled. The figure pauses, then disappears into darkness. One elderly resident, Nino, claimed she encountered one of the figures in her own yard. She described standing frozen as it faced her in silence. Neither moved, neither spoke. Moments later, it was gone. Other residents reported scratches appearing overnight on doors and windows. Strange sounds echoed outside homes. Shapes moved at the edges of visibility. Fear spread rapidly. Eventually, law enforcement opened an investigation after multiple reports of property damage. Officers searched the area, but found no suspects. No arrests were made. Various theories emerged: pranksters, mass hysteria, unidentified animals, or something else entirely. A local UFO researcher even collected physical samples from areas where sightings occurred, believing they could contain evidence of unknown activity. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the figures stopped coming. No explanation was ever confirmed, but residents still avoid walking alone at night, because no one ever discovered what was really out there. In early 2026, a mysterious discovery in Delhi left investigators searching for answers. Inside a parked vehicle in the Puragari area, authorities found 3 individuals unresponsive: a 76-year-old man, a 42-year-old man, and a 40-year-old woman. There were no signs of struggle, no visible injuries, just silence. Investigators soon focused on a 72-year-old man named Kamran, who described himself as a spiritual healer. According to police, he promised clients wealth, protection, and life transformation through ancient rituals. He offered special prepared foods and drinks, claiming they would bring good fortune. Authorities believe the victims consumed these offerings shortly before their deaths. Investigators later uncovered messages and notes showing psychological manipulation. Kamran allegedly convinced followers that they were participating in spiritual elevation. On his phone, police found photographs marked with strange symbols and writings believed to be connected to ritual practices. Financial records revealed payments from multiple individuals. Police now suspect there may be additional victims. Neighbors reported unusual nighttime gatherings around Kamran. Some described chanting. Others described ritual-like ceremonies. What began as promises of hope may have become something far more dangerous. Authorities continue to investigate. Because cases like this leave behind more than victims. They leave behind belief. And belief, in the wrong hands, can become something deeply destructive. In Vietnam, a single surveillance recording has ignited widespread debate and fear. It happened inside an ordinary home. A woman was alone in her kitchen. The security camera captured what would become her final moments. At first, nothing seemed unusual. She moved calmly, performing routine tasks. Then suddenly, everything changed. She froze. Her head slowly turned toward an empty space in front of her, as if someone had entered the room. Her eyes locked onto something that wasn't visible. She appeared to focus intensely, her expression shifting from neutral to deeply disturbed. Then, she began speaking. Her lips moved in quiet conversation. She gestured slightly, reacting as though someone stood just a few feet away. But the footage showed no one. Seconds later, her body weakened. She collapsed onto the floor. Medical officials later confirmed the cause, a clot in the brain. According to doctors, such medical emergencies can disrupt perception. Patients may experience vivid hallucinations, confusion, and a powerful sensation that someone else is present. Science offers an explanation, but the internet offered another. The video spread rapidly across social media. Millions watched as viewers began pointing out the same detail. The woman did not appear confused. She appeared focused, aware, intentional. Comment sections filled with speculation. One name surfaced again and again: Azrael. In Islamic belief, Azrael is the angel of death, appearing to collect a soul in its final moments. Some viewers believed she saw nothing more than a neurological illusion. Others believed she was not alone. And the footage itself offers no answer. Only a woman, staring into empty space, and reacting to something no one else could see. In Sydney, Australia, authorities uncovered something deeply disturbing. 4 men were arrested in connection with what investigators describe as a hidden international network. According to police, thousands of digital files were discovered during the investigation. Experts analyzing the material reported symbols and imagery associated with occult practices. The content suggested organized rituals. Authorities believe this was not an isolated group, but part of a larger underground system operating through encrypted online platforms. A system designed to remain invisible. Investigators say the individuals communicated in secret, using coded language and symbols connected to dark belief systems. Police have refused to release many details, citing the ongoing investigation and the disturbing nature of the evidence. All 4 suspects remain in custody without bail. Officials say the case is far from over, and what has already been uncovered may only be a small part of something much larger, something deliberately hidden. In the Russian city of Perm, a modern residential building has become the center of growing fear. Recently, a teenage girl fell from the 21st floor. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but nothing could be done. For residents, the shock quickly turned into something else. Recognition. This was not the first fall. According to locals, at least 4 or 5 similar fatal incidents have occurred in the same building over the past few years. Each time, investigators opened cases. Each time, the conclusions were never publicly explained in detail. No clear answers. No official explanations. Just silence. Residents say discussions about the incidents fade quickly. Questions remain unanswered. And the lack of transparency has created an atmosphere of unease throughout the complex. Experts note that repeated fatal falls in a single building are difficult to attribute solely to structural design. While high-rise living always carries risks, patterns like this demand clear investigation. But clarity has not come. There is another detail that continues to disturb locals. The building stands on land where a psychiatric hospital once operated. Older residents recall stories associated with the site, stories of suffering, isolation, and forgotten patients. Now, whispers have returned. Online forums and social media are filled with speculation. Some speak of psychological influence. Others claim the location itself carries something darker. Rational explanations point to human tragedy. But when events repeat without answers, rational explanations begin to lose their power. Behind the clean exterior of the modern tower, something remains unresolved. And residents cannot shake the feeling that the building holds more than just apartments. In Birmingham, England, a routine moment between a woman and her pet turned into something no one expected. 52-year-old Manjit Sunga was at home with her dog. At some point, the dog licked a small wound on her hand, something so minor it barely seemed worth noticing. At first, nothing appeared wrong. She continued her normal routine. She went to work. She spoke with family. She felt fine. But later that evening, something changed. She became severely ill. Her condition worsened rapidly. She was rushed to intensive care, where doctors worked urgently to stabilize her. Tests revealed a dangerous bacterial infection had entered her bloodstream. Her body began shutting down. Doctors fought to save her life through multiple emergency interventions. She survived, but the infection had caused irreversible damage. Medical teams were forced to perform life-saving amputations. The outcome changed her life permanently. Experts later explained that certain bacteria commonly found in animals can become extremely dangerous if they enter the bloodstream through open wounds, even small ones. Today, Manjit is alive and recovering at home, supported by her family. Her case serves as a reminder that sometimes, the most ordinary moments can carry invisible risks. And sometimes, danger enters without being seen. In a residential building near Moscow, residents say fear has become part of daily life. For nearly 2 years, one neighbor has caused repeated disturbances, screaming at night, striking doors, and creating scenes that leave others afraid to leave their apartments. Witnesses describe unpredictable behavior. Loud noises echo through hallways. Residents report hearing sudden shouting, followed by silence. Some neighbors say they avoid walking past her door entirely. Authorities have responded multiple times. On one occasion, a resident was injured during a confrontation and required medical attention. Emergency services intervened, and the individual was temporarily hospitalized for evaluation. But weeks later, she returned. Since then, the disturbances have continued. Residents say the atmosphere inside the building has changed. People avoid eye contact. Children refuse to use certain staircases. No one knows when the next incident might happen. For many, the fear isn't just what has already happened. It's what might happen next. Deep in one of Southeast Asia's most isolated border regions, an incident unfolded that sounded less like reality and more like folklore coming to life. A 22-year-old tourist from China, identified as Lu Chuani, had been exploring a dense jungle area near the border of Thailand and Myanmar. It was meant to be an adventure, a journey into untouched wilderness. But within moments, that journey became a silent nightmare. Hidden beneath thick vegetation was an abandoned well, nearly 40 feet deep. It was invisible to anyone not looking directly down. Lu never saw it. He stepped forward and vanished. He fell into darkness. When he regained awareness, he found himself trapped at the bottom, injured, disoriented, alone. Above him was only a distant circle of light, partially blocked by branches and shadow. He began calling for help. His voice echoed upward, escaping into the surrounding forest. The sound carried far, reaching nearby homes scattered at the forest's edge. People heard it clearly, but no one came. The calls didn't sound normal. They came at strange intervals. Weak, unsteady, sometimes barely audible. To the local villagers, the voice didn't sound human. It sounded wrong. Some believed it was a spirit. In that region, stories of wandering entities and restless voices had existed for generations. Locals were taught from childhood not to follow unexplained sounds after dark. And now, those sounds had returned. Night after night, residents reported hearing faint cries rising from the trees. Doors stayed locked. Lights stayed off. No one investigated. For 3 days, the voice continued. Inside the well, Lu forced himself to stay conscious. He rationed his energy, calling out only once every hour. His injuries made movement painful. His throat became dry. time lost meaning. Day and night blurred together. He had no way of knowing that people could hear him, and no way of knowing they were too afraid to respond. The rescue happened by accident. Police officers responding to an unrelated situation nearby entered the forest and called out while searching the area. To their surprise, something answered. A weak voice returned their call. Rescue teams followed the sound and discovered the well. At the bottom, they found Lou, alive, but barely holding on. He was pulled to safety and transported to a hospital. Medical staff confirmed he had suffered a concussion, a fractured wrist, and multiple injuries from the fall and his attempts to escape. He survived, but for 3 nights, his voice had existed in the forest, heard, feared, and mistaken for something not human. Even now, some locals say the forest sounded different after that, quieter. Lake Baikal, one of the deepest and oldest lakes in the world, is known for its beauty. But beneath its frozen surface, conditions can be unpredictable. On February 20th, 2026, a vehicle carrying tourists attempted to cross the lake's frozen expanse near Alkan Island. The ice appeared solid, but it wasn't. Without warning, the surface gave way. The vehicle broke through and sank rapidly into the freezing water below. 9 people were inside. Only 1 survived. The survivor managed to escape the vehicle before it disappeared beneath the surface. The others were unable to exit in time. Rescue teams later confirmed the vehicle had descended to a depth of nearly 60 feet. Authorities launched an investigation, focusing on safety violations and unauthorized travel routes. Lake Baikal attracts thousands of visitors each year, but experts warn that its frozen surface can be dangerously deceptive. What appears stable can collapse without warning. For one survivor, the memory remains permanent: the sound of cracking ice, the sudden drop, and the silence that followed. A reminder of how quickly everything can disappear. In the city of Bhopal, India, a surveillance camera inside a small recreational club captured an incident that would quickly spread across the internet and leave investigators deeply concerned. The footage showed a 16-year-old student entering the building. Moments later, 2 other teenagers approached him. At first, nothing appeared unusual. There was no immediate panic, no warning signs visible to anyone watching. Then everything changed. The 2 individuals suddenly moved toward him in a coordinated motion. What followed lasted only about 30 seconds. The victim sustained multiple injuries to his arm, shoulder, and back. Despite the severity of the attack, he remained conscious. Instead of collapsing, he ran. He exited the building and managed to reach his family. Emergency services were called immediately. Medical teams later confirmed that while his condition was critical, he had survived. Authorities quickly identified the suspects. According to investigators, the attack was linked to a personal conflict that had occurred days earlier. What began as a verbal disagreement had escalated into something far more serious. The most disturbing detail wasn't just the speed of the incident, but the planning behind it. Police detained the individuals involved and launched a formal investigation. Meanwhile, the surveillance footage spread online. Millions watched the silent recording. No sound, no warning, just a moment where everything shifted without explanation. Experts say incidents like this highlight how quickly situations can spiral, and how ordinary locations can become scenes of sudden violence. For the victim, recovery continues. But those 30 seconds remain permanently recorded. In the United Kingdom, a quiet residential street became the center of viral attention after a late-night encounter that left one homeowner shaken. Shortly after 2 a.m., a woman awoke with the distinct feeling that she was being watched. The sensation was strong enough to pull her from bed. She approached her front door and froze. Through the glass panel stood a man she did not recognize. He was motionless, silent, staring directly at her from just beyond the threshold. There was no attempt to knock, no visible explanation, just prolonged eye contact in the dark. The woman immediately contacted emergency services. Police arrived and detained the individual for evaluation. After medical assessment, he was reportedly released. No charges were filed. When the homeowner asked what she should do if he returned, the advice was simple: call again. The incident quickly circulated online. Many questioned whether current laws offer enough protection in cases that fall into legal gray areas, situations that feel threatening but may not meet criminal thresholds. Security specialists say that psychological impact in such cases can be severe. A home is expected to be a sanctuary. When that expectation is violated, even without physical intrusion, the sense of safety can collapse. The woman has since installed additional security measures, but she has reportedly said one thing still lingers: the stillness. In Egypt, a criminal case involving an 11-year-old girl has drawn widespread international attention and outrage. According to court records, the child was attacked near her home by a 24-year-old man who forcibly led her into a secluded area. The assault left her with severe physical trauma, including significant damage to her vision. Investigators stated that the suspect attempted to impair her ability to identify him afterward. The case moved quickly through the judicial system. In court, the judge handed down the maximum penalty under Egyptian law: capital punishment. Reports from inside the courtroom describe an emotional scene. The defendant reportedly broke down after hearing the sentence and made a desperate request to marry the victim, a proposal that was immediately rejected. Such attempts, historically used in some regions to avoid punishment in assault cases, have faced growing legal reform and public opposition. The girl's mother reportedly collapsed in relief upon hearing the verdict, thanking the court. The story spread widely across social media platforms, where users expressed disbelief that someone so young could commit such a crime. Advocacy groups say the case underscores ongoing challenges in protecting minors and ensuring justice. For many observers, the most disturbing element is not only the brutality of the act, but the attempt to escape accountability through marriage. Legal experts note that attitudes toward such loopholes are changing, but the trauma endured by the victim remains permanent. In a residential building in Russia, a routine delivery nearly turned fatal. Security footage from inside the apartment complex shows two workers entering the lobby while carrying a heavy load. The elevator doors stood open, waiting. One of the men stepped forward, shifting his weight into the cabin. That was when it happened. Without warning, and with the doors still open, the elevator suddenly shot upward. The movement was violent and immediate. In a fraction of a second, the worker jerked backward, barely clearing the threshold before the cabin rose past him. Had he committed fully to the step, he would have been caught between moving machinery and concrete. The footage ends with stunned silence. Residents later said the building's elevator had not been modernized in years. Complaints about strange sounds, sudden jolts, and inconsistent leveling had reportedly gone unanswered. Some tenants admitted they avoided using it whenever possible. Now the incident has triggered urgent demands for inspections and repairs. Officials have opened a technical review to determine what caused the malfunction. Experts note that elevator failures involving unintended movement are rare, but when they occur, the margin between survival and tragedy can be measured in inches. This time, luck intervened. Next time, it may not. In China, a disturbing story has reignited debate about rare psychiatric disorders and the fragile line between perception and reality. A young woman diagnosed with a condition known as body integrity identity disorder reportedly believed one of her legs did not belong to her body. Individuals with this disorder experience an intense and persistent feeling that a healthy limb is foreign, as though it were an attachment rather than a part of themselves. According to reports, the woman had struggled for years with the sensation that her leg was wrong. She described it as uneven, intrusive, and incompatible with her identity. What followed shocked millions. She carried out a self-inflicted amputation attempt and later shared images online. The content spread rapidly across social media platforms before being removed. Viewers reacted with disbelief, confusion, and alarm. Medical professionals stressed that such actions are not driven by attention-seeking behavior, but by profound psychological distress. Without treatment, individuals suffering from severe body identity disorders may experience overwhelming internal conflict. Authorities confirmed that the woman survived and is receiving medical and psychiatric care. The case has sparked urgent discussions among mental health experts. Some warn that exposure to online communities can reinforce dangerous beliefs. Others emphasize the need for early intervention and compassionate treatment. What unsettles many observers most is not only the act itself, but the certainty she reportedly expressed beforehand. To her, it was not self-harm. It was correction. In the Brazilian city of Uba, located in the state of Minas Gerais, catastrophic rainfall led to one of the most surreal disaster scenes captured in recent years. After days of relentless storms, flash flooding tore through neighborhoods, overwhelming drainage systems and turning streets into rushing rivers. Among the damaged buildings was a local funeral home. Water surged through the structure with such force that dozens of coffins were swept from storage and carried into the streets. Videos show them drifting through muddy floodwater, colliding with vehicles, debris, and broken infrastructure. Residents filmed in disbelief as the current carried the wooden caskets down avenues that had transformed into waterways. The imagery spread rapidly across social media, described by many as one of the most haunting symbols of the disaster. But beyond the viral footage lies a larger tragedy. Record rainfall across the region triggered landslides, structural collapses, and mass evacuations. Thousands were displaced. Entire neighborhoods were submerged. Authorities confirmed that approximately 70 people lost their lives statewide as a result of the extreme weather. Many others were reported missing as search teams continued operations in unstable areas. Disaster response crews described the flooding as among the worst in recent memory. For residents of Yuba, the sight of coffins drifting through floodwater was more than shocking. It was a stark reminder that nature does not respect boundaries, not even those meant for final rest. In the United States, construction workers renovating an abandoned courthouse in Ohio experienced something they say they cannot easily explain. The building had been empty for years. During renovations, one worker was using a thermal imaging device to check insulation and detect hidden heat sources within the walls. That was when something unusual appeared on the screen. Inside a completely empty room, the thermal camera detected a warm silhouette, a shape that resembled a human figure. At first it remained still. Then it moved. According to the workers, the glowing shape slowly drifted across the wall before shrinking and fading from view, as if dissolving into the background. One of the men managed to record the moment using his phone. The footage quickly spread online, attracting attention from paranormal researchers and curious viewers alike. Some witnesses believe the image may represent a lingering presence connected to the building's past. Courthouses often hold decades of emotional history, trials, conflicts, and life-changing decisions. Others remain skeptical. Experts suggest the thermal reading could have been caused by airflow, reflected heat, or a technical glitch in the device itself. But those who claim to have seen the footage firsthand insist the movement looked far too deliberate to be explained by simple physics. Whether a trick of technology or something stranger, the image has left many wondering what might still linger inside abandoned places. In Russia, authorities uncovered a deeply disturbing situation inside an ordinary residential building. A 75-year-old woman had been living alone in her apartment with more than a dozen cats. Neighbors knew about the animals and occasionally complained about unusual smells drifting through the hallway, but no one imagined what was really happening behind the locked door. For nearly a month, the apartment remained sealed and silent. When police finally entered the residence after multiple complaints, they discovered a tragic scene. The elderly woman had passed away weeks earlier, and with no one coming to check on her, the animals inside had been left without food or care. Some of the cats had not survived the isolation. Others had managed to endure, in the only way animals trapped in a closed environment sometimes do. Investigators described the discovery as deeply unsettling, though details were handled carefully out of respect for the victim. What became clear was that the woman's body had remained inside the apartment for weeks before anyone realized something was wrong. Now authorities are trying to understand how a person living among dozens of neighbors could vanish from daily life without anyone noticing. The case has raised troubling questions about isolation, aging, and how easily someone can disappear within the walls of a crowded building. Behind one quiet door, time had simply stopped. A single image from Mars has sparked a wave of speculation across the internet. The photograph was taken on February 22, 2026 by NASA's Curiosity rover, a robotic explorer that has been studying the Martian surface for more than a decade. The image, labeled Sol 4816, was captured inside Gale Crater and uploaded to NASA's public archive, where anyone can examine the original file. Soon after its release, online communities focused on one unusual detail. Hovering above the rocky landscape appears to be a small disc-shaped object. To some viewers, the shape resembles the classic image of a flying saucer. Within hours, the photograph began circulating widely on forums and social media platforms. Enthusiasts of unexplained phenomena argued that the object might represent something extraordinary, possibly a craft of unknown origin. However, skeptics quickly offered more grounded explanations. Scientists note that images from Mars often trigger a psychological effect known as pareidolia, where the human brain interprets random patterns as familiar shapes. Rocks, shadows, and atmospheric distortions can easily create illusions that resemble recognizable objects. NASA has not issued an official explanation regarding the image. For now, the mysterious shape remains exactly that, a curious detail in a photograph taken millions of miles away. Whether it's a strange trick of light or simply an oddly shaped rock, the image continues to capture the imagination of space enthusiasts around the world. And once again, Mars has reminded humanity that even a distant desert planet can still hold mysteries. In Istanbul, Turkey, a tragic incident at one of the city's most famous landmarks shocked both tourists and local residents. A 30-year-old woman fell from the observation deck of the historic Galata Tower, a structure that has stood over the city skyline since the 14th century. The tower rises more than 50 meters above the surrounding streets, offering panoramic views of Istanbul and the Bosphorus. Every day, thousands of visitors climb to the top to photograph the breathtaking scenery. But on this day, the observation platform became the site of a devastating accident. Witnesses reported seeing the woman lose her balance and fall from the height. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. Authorities confirmed that she died at the scene. Police in Turkey immediately opened a full investigation to determine exactly what led to the fall. Officials have not yet confirmed whether the woman was a local resident or a tourist visiting the city. Investigators are reviewing security footage and interviewing witnesses to understand whether the incident was a tragic accident or the result of other circumstances. Sadly, this is not the first fatal fall reported at Galata Tower in recent years. A similar tragedy occurred the previous year when another visitor lost their life at the same historic site. Galata Tower remains one of Istanbul's most iconic locations. But this incident serves as a haunting reminder that even the most beautiful views can hide unexpected danger. Near London, a chilling discovery has brought long-awaited answers to a case that haunted investigators for nearly 4 years. The victim was Andrzej Mucha, a 57-year-old man from Poland who had been living and working in the United Kingdom. In November 2021, he suddenly disappeared. His phone went silent. His friends and relatives were left with only uncertainty and growing fear that something terrible had happened. Search efforts produced no clues. Months passed, then years. The mystery remained unsolved. That changed in February 2026. Investigators located a suitcase hidden in a wooded area outside London. Inside, they discovered human remains. DNA analysis later confirmed the identity of the victim as Andrzej Mucha. Forensic experts determined that the death was not natural. The suitcase had sat undisturbed in the forest for years, quietly holding the secret investigators had been searching for. Police have now arrested 2 individuals believed to be connected to the crime. One of them is suspected of carrying out the act directly. Prosecutors have classified the case as a serious homicide investigation, and court proceedings are expected to reveal more details about what led to the man's disappearance. For the victim's family, the discovery brings both answers and heartbreak. And for investigators, it serves as a grim reminder that some mysteries remain hidden for years, waiting silently to be uncovered.
I see saints with shark teeth grinning through sermons.